All right, just how controversial can the idea of charity really be? Well, apparently so controversial that it requires a scorched earth battle in the United Nations Security Council, or at least a scorched earth as things can get in a room that's filled with diplomats. This is our second story today. The issue is what type of help the world should offer to the people of Venezuela. The U.S. says, get rid of Maduro. The Russians say, allow the elected president to fix his own country without interference. Who's right? According to Russia's diplomats, the United States is putting on a political show under the pretense of delivering aid. And they do point out that U.S. sanctions have already cost the Venezuelan people somewhere in the range of $40 billion in oil reserves, which may be part of the reason that their economy has hit rock bottom. But Washington says that Maduro did need the U.S.'s help to ruin his economy. They blame his socialist economic policies. Here is the Russian ambassador to the United Nations blasting U.S. diplomat Elliott Abrams.
It is now perfectly clear that Washington's sole aim was not resolving the problems of Venezuela, not caring for its people, but for regime change, including threats to do so by military intervention.
The United States and the international community must support the Venezuelan people as they strive to reclaim their democracy.
Let's call a spade a spade. We observe how London and Washington are blatantly robbing a sovereign country, trying to bring it to poverty in order to act within the framework of the concept of humanitarian intervention, which is unrecognized by international law, to change the undesirable regime there.
Maduro and his cronies and some in this body claim that delivering humanitarian assistance is a political show and a cover for military intervention. But it is very clear, only the Maduro regime is using violence. Only the regime has called in both its security forces and armed gangs.
You know, Abrams, who does seem visually outraged by the accusation of regime change there, is actually quite familiar with this topic. He was convicted back in 1991 of lying to Congress about pretty much doing the same thing in Central America. In fact, a lot of people are thinking he may be an odd choice for this position or this role that he's now filling as the representative from the United States to figure out the problem of Venezuela. RT correspondent Trinity Chavez reports from the United Nations on this verbal dispute.
Stakes were high at the UN Security Council meeting where the U.S. and Russia presented draft resolutions on Venezuela as the United States continues to apply pressure on Caracas. While the resolution backed by the U.S. got the minimum of 9 votes required for adoption, the decision was vetoed by Russia and China. Russia's envoy to the UN, Vasilina Benzia, was first to speak.
You are now deliberately undermining the unity of the Council. But do you need this unity? Our U.S. colleagues apparently have forgotten what international law is. You only have ultimatums, sanctions, and threats of use of force left in your diplomatic toolbox. Of course, we note that this has all been initiated solely to accuse a non-consenting state of obstructing the delivery of assistance to the Venezuelan people. However, this is yet another example of shameless propaganda.
The United States resolution supported Maduro's opposition leader, Juan Guaido, and argued for free and fair presidential elections in Venezuela and unhindered delivery of humanitarian aid. However, China voted against the resolution, saying it opposes external force interference.
China supports the Venezuelan government in its efforts to safeguard its national sovereignty, independence, and stability. The Venezuelan affairs should be decided by the Venezuelan people. At the Security Council, on the Venezuela issue, our starting point is to uphold the spirit of the UN Charter and the basic principles governing international relations, promote a peaceful settlement of the Venezuela issue, and maintain long-term peace, stability, and development in Latin America.
Meanwhile, the Russian draft resolution, which backs President Nicolas Maduro, expressed concern at threats to use force against Venezuela and interfere in the country's domestic affairs. However, that resolution was not adopted as it failed to gain the minimum of 9 votes in favor of the draft. This comes after dueling concerns of violent clashes on the border of Colombia over the weekend, where one of the trucks with supplies was burned.
This man-made crisis has extended well beyond Venezuela's borders and threatens to destabilize the region. Events from this past weekend show that Maduro will stop at nothing to maintain power, including the use of gang violence against unarmed Venezuelan citizens.
Maduro refuses to accept humanitarian aid from the U.S. while accepting it from other countries like Russia and China. Although Maduro is elected president, the U.S. and 50 close allies now recognize Juan Guaido as the interim president, while Maduro's government has accused the U.S. of staging a coup. The rival resolutions reflect the deep divisions in the Security Council over the political conflict in oil-rich Venezuela. While there have been several heated exchanges in the council between supporters of Maduro and Guaido, some believe the UN's most powerful body is likely to remain paralyzed when it comes to taking action. Reporting in New York, Trinity Chavez, RT.
I'm Rick Sanchez. You found us on YouTube, and that's awesome. But you know what? I'm also live every night at 7 and 8 p.m. Eastern on DirecTV and Dish and cable and satellite, the RT app, and Pluto TV. I'll see you there.